My name's Brandon and this is Cartoon Network Video Game History, a show where I take a look back on all of the video games based on Cartoon Network shows and retrospectively review them. Adventure Time has had strong representation in the video game space, but there have been far more misses than hits. Hey Ice King was brilliant, but everything that followed has been varying degrees of awful. Adventure Time Pirates of the Enchiridion is the final chance for the series to redeem itself. Released on July 17, 2018 for the current gen consoles and PC, this is, as I said, the last Adventure Time game as of making this. Adventure Time is seeing somewhat of a revival with the launch of HBO Max, so there could be another game eventually, but I wouldn't hold my breath. To close things out, a brand new developer has been brought into the fold. Climax Studios have been given the keys, and they have a ton of experience, particularly in licensed video games. Most notably, they developed SpongeBob SquarePants Super Sponge and the DS and GBA versions of Nicktoons Unite. And they also developed Silent Hill Shattered Memories. What an eclectic group of games. However, despite their long-standing history, this was the first time they developed a game for Cartoon Network. I had a browse of their official website to see what past games they were promoting, and to my surprise, I found some kind of misleading practices going on. They're showing off the box art for the console version of Nicktoons Unite, which is very different to the handheld versions they developed. And in general, it feels like they're trying to pass off a lot of other people's games as their own. If you just looked at their website, you'd think they were the main developers for Crackdown 3 or Resogun.
Cybernetic Brandon from the future here. Again. After recording my voiceover for this video, I noticed Climax were using a strange box art for SpongeBob Super Sponge. After doing some research, I found out that this is a fan art version from a user on DeviantArt that they most likely took without permission. Super shitty, guys. And they clearly don't even know what the box art is of a game they developed.
Critically, Pirates of the Enchiridion did pretty well for itself. It has a 6.6 average score for the Xbox One version, a 6.2 average for the PS4 version, while the Switch version is lower, clocking in at a 5.0. The official Xbox and PlayStation magazines in the UK gave the game a 7 and a 6, while Game Informer also gave it a 6, and IGN gave it a 5.8. This is actually another Cartoon Network game that I had reviewed in a past life. Back in the day, I gave it a 6. There seems to be a bit of merit to Pirates of the Enchiridion, and I obviously enjoyed my first playthrough of it, but will it hold up in 2020? Before I dive deep into this game, make sure you've subscribed to Cartoon Review. We're less than 2 weeks away from Samurai Jack Battle Through Time being released. I'm trying my best to get a review copy so I can drop a video for you all as soon as the game comes out, but that's not looking likely. Despite being the most passionate and knowledgeable person on YouTube or any review site when it comes to Cartoon Network games, Adult Swim games seem pretty set on completely ignoring me. Either way, I'm still dedicated to bringing you that review as soon as humanly possible. The only way to make sure you don't miss out is to subscribe. But now, on with the review. Steven Universe has seen great success by looking to the tried and tested RPG genre, and now Adventure Time is attempting to do the same. We went almost 20 years with Cartoon Network resisting the urge to make RPGs, and now it feels like the floodgates are open. Here you'll be engaged in turn-based combat while sailing around the land of Ooo, which has been mysteriously flooded overnight. This is sort of an interesting premise, but it also feels like a clever way for Climax to create an Adventure Time fully 3D RPG without having to build a gigantic recreation of Ooo. As you can see, everything is flooded and you travel by boat. This makes zipping between iconic locations easier, quicker, and a lot less development work. Honestly, I like this decision. The iconic locations like the Candy Kingdom are what you want to see and experience here. I don't think anybody wants to be stuck in uninteresting, transitional areas for too long. Travelling by boat is relatively painless, the boat controls pretty well, and you always have a waypoint guiding you to where you need to go. The waypoint in particular is a great move. Travelling around could have been a massive pain without it. There are a fair few optional areas to explore as well, so you don't entirely lose that sense of exploration that is often a big part of an RPG like this. As you're sailing, you'll come across items scattered in the water, which Jake can pick up. You'll also very rarely encounter pirates that you can fight. Outside of that, travelling from location to location is extremely dull. Most of the time you're just slamming down the accelerator and slightly tilting the analog stick for a few minutes. It's so dull that it almost begs the question of why it exists. They might as well have just fast traveled the player from location to location. The only thing that the sailing really adds is to the pirate theme of the game. Without the sailing, you'd barely even realise that there was pirate stuff going on most of the time. Once you hop off the boat and start exploring locations, things are pretty standard. You can control any of your party members as you run around, and each of them has a unique ability. Jake can traverse various gaps, Finn can scout out the map from vantage points, Marceline can smash open locked treasure chests, and BMO can hack open doors. I think my favourite part about the running around and exploration is that Jake can turn into a motorbike. This is a much quicker form of travel and created a lot of weird moments. There were plenty of times where the game wanted me to use Jake's stretchy abilities, but I was able to go full Lance Murdoch and jump gaps on my motorbike.
I'm gonna make it! I'm gonna make it! This is the greatest thrill of my life! I'm king of the world! Woohoo! Woohoo! Ah! Ooh, oh, oh, God, no, yeah, go,
Also, there are very basic side quests you can do. These are totally uninteresting and barely even worth mentioning. One of the big recurring thoughts I had while playing Pirates of the Enchiridion is that the game feels like it doesn't really follow through on any of its ideas. You've already heard me mention the pirate stuff, which is pretty underplayed all things considered. This also applies to the game's interrogation mechanic. This is the sort of thing I was expecting to be in Finn and Jake Investigations, considering the title and all, but nope, the pirate-themed game is the one with the real detective work. In a sort of, but not really, LA Noire style, a handful of times during your journey you'll need to coax information out of characters.
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Michelle, but your mother is dead. Do you think you could answer a few questions for us?
Try.
This takes the form of a weird spinning wheel where you choose a calm or aggressive response for Finn or Jake. Your goal here is to pick the correct response each time. If you're unable to extract the info by the end of the interrogation, you fail and have to start over. While there are consequences, they're never really a threat as the game essentially holds your hand through the entire process. It's just laughably basic and easy, and like the sailing between locations, made me wonder why it even exists. You're barely even participating in it. Honestly, I would have preferred to see a well-polished cutscene play out over this half-baked mechanic. But in the end, I guess that's all just window dressing. The main gameplay to sink your teeth into is the RPG combat. It's mostly standard turn-based stuff. Depending on the speed stats of your party members and the enemies, you'll take it in turns attacking, defending, and using items. Where it differs is in a gameplay idea that is reminiscent of the Steven Universe Light Trilogy games. In those games, every attack you use has a cost, which is deducted from a star counter. Once you've used up all of your stars, you need to wait for it to regenerate, or use an item to give you a few extra. While Pirates of the Enchiridion doesn't require a cost for every attack, anything but the basic attack has one. This meter fills up by 1 point for every turn a party member takes, but like Steven Universe, you can use items to boost it, and BMO has a special ability that gives it a leg up too. On top of those special moves, each character has an ultimate ability that is unlocked in a unique way. Finn charges it through dealing damage, while Jake on the other hand has to take damage to fill his. Marceline gains hers through dealing the finishing blow to enemies, and BMO's grows via using items. I actually really like the different ways to gain each party member's ultimate ability. They all play off their various strengths. Once filled, you get a super powerful one-time use move that can be activated whenever you want. When you look at the meat and bones of the combat, it's pretty competent. One of my minor pet peeves was that controlling the battle menu via analog stick was very touchy, and you don't get an alternative. This isn't a major issue most of the time, as clicking the wrong option can be negated by pressing circle and going back. Unfortunately, this isn't the case if you choose the block option. Your character will immediately go into their blocking stance and the turn is over, meaning you just wasted a valuable move. It never really screwed me over too much, but it was a source of frustration far too many times. There are also a lot of little quirks to the battles, almost all of which are annoying. My least favourite quirk was that enemies can run away from you. This renders the entire battle pointless as you don't get any XP from it. The pain of slogging through a battle against an enemy party of 3 or 4, only for the final member to run away at the last second, is almost indescribable. There are also way too many status effects that can be inflicted. I'm not sure of the exact number, but there would have to be close to 10, and they all have some dumb quirky name like Flumped or Poo Brain. The overabundance of effects means it feels like almost every turn somebody is being inflicted with something new. It's just too much. I also found that when the tables were turned and a status effect was going to be inflicted on an enemy, almost always it turned out that they were immune to it. The one status effect that I did like and found rather interesting was when a character flips out. After taking a beating, one of your party members can get so angry that they stop obeying your commands and start attacking the opposition of their own accord. I always got a kick out of this happening. And like pretty much every RPG, you'll come across boss battles during your journey. These were way too tedious for their own good. Boss characters take far too long to take down. The boss fights drag on forever while never feeling like much of a challenge. Rather than feeling like a threat that could destroy my entire team at any moment, the boss battles just feel like a wall. They stand in your way, take forever to chip down, but you never really feel threatened by them. They just stand there, menacingly.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Sitting there, spamming the same moves over and over again for minutes on end is just boring. God forbid you actually lose one of these battles. I would have straight up deleted the game from my PS4's hard drive if I spent an eternity chipping a boss's health down, only for it to kill me at the last second. Winning battles on your journey will give each character experience and will level you up. However, the act of leveling up is not actually the important part. To make your characters stronger, you'll need to spend the money you find in the overworld on a handful of different stats. It's kind of weird that you have to spend money on yourself, like who are you paying this money to, but it also creates a little metagame of deciding whether you'll spend money on items or stat upgrades. This completely dissipates towards the latter half of the game though, because you start earning so much money that you can max out every character's upgrades while also purchasing a king's ransom worth of items. At this point, I'd describe Pirates of the Enchiridion as competent, but joyless. From a gameplay perspective, things are okay. It functions well enough, but there are too many things that drag it down, and overall, a lot of the experience is bland. The actual act of playing Pirates of the Enchiridion feels like a chore most of the time. It is far too bland. Where things start to tip the scales from okay game to bad game are how it runs from a technical standpoint. This game is one of the buggiest and jankiest Cartoon Network games I have ever played. There are constant significant frame rate stutters, particularly when sailing. I don't think there was a single time I managed to sail from location to location without massive frame rate issues. The load times are also ridiculous. Whenever a loading screen pops up, you'll have enough time to make a coffee, do your taxes, finally start on that book you've always been meaning to read, and steal the Klopman diamond, all before the game resumes. Then you get to the cutscenes, which quite frankly are a complete mess. Voices are constantly out of sync here, rendering them pointless.
There's no way to get to the Fire Kingdom right now. There are huge steam geysers blocking the way.
Bet BMO's navigation app could get us through. Hey, we should probably think about putting
What's the point of getting to a story moment in a cutscene if it's just a garbled mess? Cutscenes also regularly fade out before the characters have finished speaking. How does this even get missed when QA testing your game?
Then that's where we have to go. Let's get back to the...
And then the cherry on top for the cutscenes came towards the end of the game, where they put an entire fucking novel on screen for subtitles. Honestly, the cutscenes functioned so poorly that I question whether anybody even looked over them. It's even worse if Climax Studios did look over them, because it shows they ultimately just don't care. Making sure the voices are in sync, that the cutscenes don't fade out prematurely, and that the subtitles fit on the screen are basic issues that should have been fixed as soon as they were seen. Sure, it's probably not as easy as snapping your fingers and having everything run properly, but it's not like we're talking about some super intricate gameplay bug. It feels like a massive lack of care on the developer's part. To top it all off, I had the game blue screen on me. I've never had this happen to me while playing a PS4 Cartoon Network game before, and I could count the number of times this has happened in the past 7 years on one hand. Even Steven Universe Save the Light, which was slammed for being a buggy mess, was not even in the same stratosphere as Pirates of the Enchiridion. The last thing I want to touch on are the story, graphics, and music. Personally, I found the story spectacularly boring. The premise is that Finn and Jake wake up one day and everything is kind of flooded. It's actually an interesting hook to kick things off. But the story that follows is uninteresting. You just kind of float from location to location, doing things that feel vaguely related to the flooding issue. It never feels like anything is progressing, and it's sorely missing an overarching villain or something along those lines to keep you engaged. They sort of try to push Fern in this role at points, but it doesn't come across well. Not helping things is that the game ends like a wet fart. The villain behind all of this chaos just sort of shows up while you're chatting to the Ice King. Finn and Jake are literally talking about how they have no clue who's behind it all, and then Villain McVillainface shows up to reveal that he's the bad guy.
You know, thinking about it, we probably should have been able to figure that out on our own a long time ago.
Yes, but none of you has ever struck me as particularly smart. Especially Mr. Blue over there.
Hey, no need to get nasty.
Gumball, what's the deal?
He then proceeds to immediately engage you in the most boring and easy boss fight of the whole game, lose spectacularly, and then the game's over. I will admit though, the game made me laugh my ass off with its final scene. Climax Studios has the balls to end it all on a cliffhanger and try to set up a sequel.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
Fern breaks out Villain McVillainface with the implication that they're going to cook up more evil schemes. I kind of admire the balls on them to do this, considering how poor this game is on the narrative side of things. In many ways, it feels like a poor man's version of the Steven Universe RPGs. They used a kind of similar combat system, and they seem to want to tell an ongoing story. But this doesn't work when the storytelling is half-assed and a cliffhanger is just tacked on the end. Also doesn't help when your cutscenes are barely functional. Graphically, I think things are a touch better than the last time we saw the franchise, but it's nothing to write home about. The soundtrack is pretty forgettable too. I wouldn't call it bad, but none of the tracks were memorable to me. Personally, I'd say this is the weakest of all the Adventure Time soundtracks. I can genuinely say I didn't get any enjoyment from playing Adventure Time Pirates of the Enchiridion. When you just look at it purely from a gameplay perspective, it's competent but uninteresting. The gameplay works in the strictest sense of the word, but it's not doing anything remotely engaging. Then when you add in all of the technical issues and how poor the story and cutscenes are, it's hard to call Adventure Time Pirates of the Enchiridion anything other than a mess. I can't believe that I liked this game as much as I did when first reviewing it for Push Square. Having played the rest of Cartoon Network's catalogue has given me a really unique perspective now. Nothing this game does hasn't been done better elsewhere in Cartoon Network video game history. It especially pales in comparison to the Steven Universe games that were releasing around it. I had the highest of hopes for the Adventure Time games, particularly after reviewing Hey Ice King, but the following games could not have been bigger disappointments. It's a real shame too, because a show like Adventure Time should have been so easy to adapt into video games. Next time I'll be reviewing a forgotten Steven Universe game. While the Light Trilogy is pretty well known, there was a Steven Universe mobile game released in April of 2019 that has been massively buried. It's not like it's just a throwaway free app either. This game actually has a price tag. For some reason, Steven Universe The Phantom Fable seems to have been relegated to obscurity. Despite this, it seems to be a full-fledged game as far as I can tell, so I'll be checking it out and seeing what's up. To catch that and the final few Cartoon Network reviews, as well as the debut of Nickelodeon video game history, make sure you're subscribed.